Chapter 5. Philpotts. Sitting at dinner in Philpotts that evening, Anna felt wonderful. The fresh air, the sun, the swimming, everything had made her feel so alive. She found it hard to remember the Anna of a few days ago, and she almost couldn't recognize Stephen, he looked so relaxed. "You've got a red nose," she said. "It's not red. It's the light in this restaurant. And have you seen yours, by the way?" "Yes, it looks very healthy," she replied. "Why is mine red and yours healthy?" he laughed. "What are you having?" she asked, changing the subject. "Need you ask?" said Stephen. "Lobster à l'américaine, of course. And you?" "The same. Do you think it's one of Tristan's?" "Will we be able to taste the difference?" he joked. Anna knew that over dinner, Stephen would probably find it easy to start talking about the things that were making him unhappy, but she didn't want him to. She wanted a relaxed, uncomplicated meal, an evening without thinking about London, work, or Stephen's problems. So she deliberately kept the conversation away from anything serious. "Hey, look at that! Doesn't it look wonderful?" Anna said, when the waiter brought their plates to the table. The warm lobster pieces covered each plate, and a little bowl of extra sauce came with it. She dipped some bread into the sauce. This is seriously delicious." The lobster was followed by a lime and lemon dessert, and a wonderful selection of cheeses. They finished with strong coffee. "We're going to be all right here, aren't we?" said Anna, as they stood up to go. "I think this is going to turn out to be our best holiday ever." "I hope so," said Stephen. Just as they were leaving, Tristan arrived. "Evening. I thought you might be here," he said. "I just wondered if you'd like to come fishing tomorrow morning, Stephen. You obviously get up early, and I usually go out about 6:30 for a couple of hours. You too, Anna, if you'd like." "Thanks, Tristan," said Stephen. "I'd enjoy that. What about you, Anna?" "I'd rather have a bit longer in bed tomorrow morning. I'm still catching up on my sleep. But you go, Stephen." "Meet me at the harbour at about 6 tomorrow, then," said Tristan. "It's a blue boat called Wave Dancer." "Right. See you there. And thanks again. Good night." "That should be interesting," said Anna to Stephen as they walked home. "I shall expect you to find out everything about him. All that business with that man in the pub yesterday, who the woman is who lived in our cottage, everything, please." "I'm going fishing. I'm not going to question him about his private life," Stephen laughed. "If I catch anything, we can have it for tomorrow night's dinner, can't we?" "Yes, but don't bring home a lobster, please. I don't know whether I could cook one of those. They're alive when you put them in boiling water, and they make a terrible noise. I know it's stupid, but I'd rather eat lobster at Philpotts and not hear them dying." "Don't worry," Stephen said. "I don't expect Tristan will let me have one. I should think he needs to sell the expensive stuff to make some money." At 6 the next morning, Tristan was waiting on his boat, Wave Dancer. He was dressed in the shorts he seemed to live in during the hot weather. He was wondering why he'd asked Stephen and Anna to come with him. He didn't usually ask the Dolphin Cottage people out on his boat in his private time, but there was something he liked about Stephen and Anna. They were different. But was he feeling just the smallest bit of disappointment that it was only Stephen who was coming? He turned and looked up at Dolphin Cottage, just in time to see Stephen coming out, pulling a black T-shirt over his head. A few minutes later, he jumped onto the boat. "Am I late? Sorry," he said. "Had a bit of difficulty waking up this morning. Could be something to do with the excellent wine last night." Tristan smiled. "Do you know anything about boats?" he asked. "Sure, I'm used to boats. We always had holidays by the sea when I was a kid, and my parents taught me what to do." They left the harbour and turned north following the coast. Tristan dropped some lobster pots into the sea and said he'd collect them later that day. The sea was calm as they continued northwards. It was a bit cooler on the water than on the land, and Stephen was pleased he'd remembered his sweater. He'd left Anna in bed, sleeping like a baby. She hadn't even woken up when he'd dropped his keys on the floor. Lucky her. Being out on the sea was beginning to work its magic. As the boat rose and fell gently, Stephen remembered his excitement as a child on fishing trips with his father. His memories of his childhood holidays were of fishing with his father for hours, not saying much, but enjoying the activity. It was one of the few times they'd spent a lot of time together. Now it was too late. His father had died a year ago from an unexpected heart attack, leaving Stephen full of things he'd wanted to say to him. Today the sea was calm. The sun made the tops of the waves dance and shine. And when Tristan stopped the boat, there was silence. No more noise from the engine, just the rather sad sounds from a few seagulls. Together they started fishing off the back of the boat. After a few minutes, Tristan said, "Got one." He pulled in the fish and said, "A mackerel. Nothing special, but quite nice grilled on the barbecue. Right, I can relax now. I always think it's a good sign to catch the first fish quickly. I think we're going to have an excellent couple of hours." "I hope so," replied Stephen. "Anna wants something for tonight's dinner." "Are you both okay in Dolphin Cottage?" "It's not very modern, I'm afraid. I haven't done much to it, really. My grandmother lived there all her life, and she left it to me when she died 4 years ago." "Oh, we're absolutely fine. We love it. Actually, I don't think we'll ever want to leave it." Tristan looked at him rather sharply. "Sorry, have I said something wrong?" said Stephen. "No, not at all." Tristan shook his head. "I was just remembering someone else who said that about the cottage. But in fact, she did leave in the end." "You're very lucky to live in such a beautiful place. Have you always lived here?" Stephen was interested in getting people to talk about themselves, and it was easier than talking about himself. "Yes, except when I went away for 4 years to university." Stephen hadn't expected that. Apparently, Tristan had left Polreath when he was 18 and had been very excited about living in a city. But he'd found that he missed the sea and the open spaces. "Now, when I have to go to London, I look at people's faces and see how difficult life is for a lot of them," Tristan explained. "All that running about and all that fear. You know, fear of crime, fear of losing your job. I couldn't live like that. I've tried and I know. Polreath is home for me. I know it is." "Have you got any family here?" asked Stephen. "Only my sister now," Tristan replied. "My parents moved away when my father retired from fishing, but my sister and I are very close. She's happy here, like me." Stephen listened to what Tristan was saying, and for the first time he began to feel he understood. Of course, He'd heard other people say how hard city living was, and he'd even said it himself. In fact, last year, when they were on their way home from 2 weeks' holiday in Greece, he'd suggested to Anna that they should sell their house and move to somewhere peaceful. But he'd known it was only a dream. When he'd gone back to the agency the following Monday, he found he enjoyed the office politics and the competition for new business. It made him feel alive and at the centre of things. But now something was different. Perhaps it was because everything at work was so uncertain. Again there was silence in the boat. Both men watched the water to see if any fish were biting, and both men were deep in their own thoughts. They each caught some fish, mainly mackerel, and Tristan talked a little more about Polreath and his life there. Stephen liked the easy way in which Tristan talked. He knew that that was how Anna would like him to be. "Well, we'd better go back, I suppose," said Tristan. "I've got a trip to do later." "How many have you caught?" "4. Not bad for a city boy," Stephen replied. There was something in Stephen's voice that made Tristan look at him. Chapter 6. The Phone Call. Anna was in the front garden of Dolphin Cottage, and she waved as she saw the boat come into the harbour. "You two seem very happy together," said Tristan. "Yes," Stephen agreed. They had known Tristan for only a few days, and it seemed to Stephen a rather personal thing to say, but then Stephen realized he didn't mind. "Have you got anyone special?" he asked. "Sort of," Tristan replied, and busied himself tying up the boat to the harbour side. He didn't really feel like going into detail about it at that moment. One reason was that he was thinking about Anna, not Jill. "Thanks for the trip," said Stephen. "It was great. By the way, if you're not doing anything tonight, would you like to come and have dinner with us? We could barbecue the fish. Bring your friend if you want." "Okay, thanks. It'll just be me, though," said Tristan, pleased at the thought of seeing Anna again. "Fine. See you about 8, then." Stephen walked up from the harbour and held up his fish to show Anna, but when he got nearer, he could see that something was wrong. "What's the matter?" he asked. "Has something happened?" "Afraid so. Rebecca's just phoned and said your office needs you to ring them immediately." "Oh, shit! I knew we shouldn't have left our number with Rebecca," he said angrily. "What the hell do they want? I don't feel like ringing them back. I think I just won't, and pretend we never got the message. Do you know if Rebecca told the office she knew where we were?" "Apparently she said she'd pass the message on to you, so I guess you'll have to contact them." "Oh, bloody hell!" Stephen threw the fish down on the table and went inside. She could hear him in the kitchen, noisily making a cup of coffee. She wondered what the problem was at his office. She had met Charlie Jardine, Stephen's boss, a couple of times, and he'd seemed to be a reasonable person. What was it all about? Stephen must be talking to him now. She could hear his voice rising in anger, and then she heard him put the phone down with a bang. He came out and sat next to Anna. His face was red with anger. "Well?" she asked. "Charlie wants everybody back in the office for a crisis meeting tomorrow. Everybody, and that includes me," Stephen replied. "Another agency wants to buy our company." "Can't you talk about it on the phone?" Anna asked. "Apparently things are happening so quickly, and he needs to be able to act fast." Stephen stood up and started walking up and down the tiny front garden. "And he says he wants to do what's best for the company. He sounded really worried on the phone." "So you're going then," she said, rather coldly. "I'll have to. Mark's being called back from a conference in Italy as well." "Well, that's work, not a holiday," said Anna sharply. "I know. Oh, look, I'm sorry." Stephen put his arms round her. "I know this has ruined things for you as well. If I go this morning, I'll come back straight after the meeting. I'll drive through the night if I have to, but I promise I'll be back for breakfast on Thursday." "Could you lose your job if someone buys the company?" Anna asked. "Yes, it's quite possible," Stephen said. "It's also possible I could lose it anyway. The agency is obviously in a bad way as far as money goes." "Oh, Stephen, just when we were beginning to relax here. It's not fair," said Anna, close to tears. Stephen finished his coffee and went back into the cottage. Anna continued to sit in the front garden. Half an hour later, Stephen appeared, carrying a small bag and wearing his work trousers. "I'll walk with you to the car," said Anna. It felt unreal to both of them, him going, her staying. She could see that Stephen's mind was already full of work. The inside of the car was hot from being in the sun, so they opened all the doors to let some air in. "You'll be okay on your own for 2 days, won't you?" said Stephen. "Yes, no problem. Don't worry about me. You just be careful driving. Take care, please." "I will. Bye, love." "Bye." "I don't know what to say. Good luck, I suppose. Ring me tonight from home. I want to know you're there." Anna watched Stephen drive away. Poor man, she thought, and then, selfishly, "I'm pleased I don't have to go too." Chapter 7. Tristan Comes for Dinner. Anna had a pleasant day. It was difficult not to. Polreath was the same interesting place, and the weather was wonderful again. She walked around and did a bit of shopping. Some people in the village were beginning to greet her. "Morning, another nice day," they said, and she smiled back. She sat in the front garden of the cottage, reading and watching all the comings and goings in the harbour. She was learning to recognize some of the different boats, which ones were fishing boats, and which ones were owned by visitors. Tristan's boat, full of passengers, went out, and she decided she'd find out where he was going the next day. It might be nice to do something with other people tomorrow, she thought. She looked at Stephen's fish in the fridge and remembered how pleased he'd looked when he'd got off Tristan's boat earlier that day. "I'll have some later," she thought. "Don't want to waste them." In the late afternoon, she went for a swim. Back home, she showered and sat with a glass of white wine in the front garden until the sun disappeared behind the hill. Then she went inside to get some dinner. There was a knock on the door, and Tristan appeared. "Hello? I hope I'm not late." "Pardon?" said Anna. "Late for what?" "Dinner. Stephen asked me for dinner." Tristan could see something was wrong. "Oh, no, I can see you didn't know." "I'm sorry. Come in. No, I didn't know. The thing is," explained Anna, "Stephen's had to go back to London. He had a phone call when you were out fishing this morning, and he's gone." "Oh, I'm sorry. Is everything all right? I mean, I hope nothing bad has happened." Tristan meant what he said, but if he was honest with himself, he was also pleased that Anna was now here alone, without Stephen. "It's a crisis at work," Anna said. "He didn't want to leave, but he'll be back on Thursday, he says." "Oh, good. Anyway, I'll go. Don't worry about dinner," said Tristan. "No, stay, really," she said. "I was just grilling the fish. I can easily do some more. Help yourself to a glass of wine." "Well, if you're sure. Thanks." Tristan poured himself a drink and filled up Anna's glass as well. "Can I do anything?" he asked. "You could cut the bread, if you want, and take all the plates and stuff outside. Is it okay with you if we eat outside?" "Fine." Tristan carried everything into the front garden and waited for Anna. He felt a bit strange sitting there, remembering other times he'd had dinner at the cottage. Jill and he used to eat there most evenings during their first summer together. But when she was here earlier this year, though, she seemed to prefer to eat at his house, or in the village somewhere. The cottage had become Jill's private world. Anna brought the fish. Strange, he thought to himself. There's Jill and Stephen in London, and Anna and me here. Tristan talked a bit about his day. After the fishing that morning, he'd been quite busy. 2 trips with a full boat each time, up the coast, looking at the land from the sea. He seemed surprised when she asked him if he ever got bored doing the same trips every week. "Never bored," he said. "Annoyed, maybe, at some of the stupid questions people ask sometimes. But basically, I can't think of a better way of earning a living." The phone rang and made them both jump. "That'll be Stephen, I hope," said Anna, and went to answer it. Tristan sat and thought how much he liked Anna's company. She came back out a few minutes later. "Yes, it was. He said sorry about tonight, about forgetting to tell me you were coming to dinner, and he says London is hot, airless, and dirty." "Does he enjoy his job, whatever it is?" asked Tristan. "He works for an advertising agency. To be honest, I don't know if he does enjoy it anymore. He used to, but recently something's changed. Maybe he's changed. He was hoping, well, actually, I was hoping, this holiday would give him a chance to have a good think about it all. Perhaps now the decisions will be taken for him. He may come back on Thursday without a job. But I'm sorry, you probably don't want to hear all that. You were just being polite." "No, I wasn't, if you understand me. I'm interested. I like the little I know about Stephen. I enjoyed our fishing trip this morning." Tristan paused and then said, "Maybe it's my turn, to be honest. You see, you and Stephen make me think about myself and my, I don't know what to call her, woman friend, girlfriend, whatever." Anna waited for him to go on. He told her about Jill and him, and the difficulties of continuing a long-distance relationship. He spoke quite openly about it all. Anna couldn't help comparing him with Stephen. Stephen always had such difficulty trying to explain something personal. The death of his father had hit him hard, but he still hadn't really talked about it with her. Only once, about 3 months ago, when she'd found him in the kitchen crying. Then he'd managed to talk about it a bit. Poor darling Stephen. People who only saw his public face just didn't know him. They opened another bottle of wine and carried on talking about him, about her and Stephen, about the village and the people who lived there. Finally, Tristan stood up. "It's time I went. Thank you for a really nice evening. You're a good listener. So are you." "Shall I see you tomorrow?" he asked. "Yes, I was thinking of coming on one of your trips. Where are you going in the morning?" asked Anna. "Out past Skellig and round the rocks." He took a step nearer her. "It's a good trip. The boat leaves at 10. "Fine. I'll be there." Maybe it was the wine, but he seemed to be standing closer. He put his hands on her shoulders and kissed her quite firmly on the lips. "Good night. See you in the morning," he said, and closed the gate behind him. Chapter 8. On Wave Dancer. When Anna woke the next morning, she forgot that Stephen wasn't in bed next to her until she turned over to touch him. She looked at her watch. 8 o'clock. He'd be on his way to the office now, probably caught in traffic. Poor thing. She lay there for a while thinking about him, and wondering how much today would change their lives. "Coffee," she thought, "and I think I'll go and get the newspaper. I can do the crossword before I go on the trip." On her way down to the shop, she started thinking about last night's dinner with Tristan. She wondered if today they'd be as easy with each other as they'd been last night. The woman in the shop said, "Morning. Did you have a nice dinner last night?" "Yes, thank you," said Anna in a surprised voice. The woman continued, "I saw you when I was walking my dog. You can't keep anything secret in this place for long." Anna laughed. I must remember that, she thought. Back home, she tried the crossword, but it was too difficult, so she left it for later. She could see Tristan's boat below with Tristan on board. She noticed there was more movement on the sea today. It wasn't rough, but the boats were moving up and down a little. She went inside to collect her backpack from the cottage and went down to the harbour. Tristan was by the boat, talking to another man. "Morning, Anna," said Tristan. "Everything okay? Oh, this is Gary. He works with me on the boat trips. Anna's staying at Dolphin Cottage," he said to Gary. They smiled at each other. Gary looked at her quite closely, and she wondered if they'd been talking about her when she arrived. "I haven't got a ticket or anything for this trip," said Anna. "Do I need one?" "No," replied Gary. "You pay on the boat. Have you got a jacket or something with you? You might need it today. We were just saying that the sea'll probably be a bit rough on the other side of the island. The water comes over the boat in certain places. Sit near the front on the right side if you don't want to get wet," Tristan added. "All right, thanks." He jumped onto the boat and then turned to help Anna. He held out his hand and took hers very firmly. He kept hold until she had sat down. Other people were now arriving and getting on the boat. Most of them seemed to know Tristan. Perhaps they went on his trips often. Anna recognized one or two who she'd seen on the beach or in the village somewhere. Everybody seemed very well prepared. Jackets, extra sweaters, binoculars, cameras. Ready for a transatlantic expedition, she thought. Then she looked at Tristan and Gary in their shorts and T-shirts, and wondered which group had got it right. Tristan started explaining to everyone where they were going and what they might see on the trip. This gave her a good chance to look at him carefully. He told a few funny stories, and the passengers laughed in the right places. Anna found herself thinking how attractive he was, and not just physically. He had an air of confidence about him that she liked. But then he must have felt Anna's eyes on him, because he turned towards her, and she blushed. She could feel her cheeks going red, just like a schoolgirl caught doing something wrong. How embarrassing. As soon as they left the harbour, the sea became much rougher, but nobody seemed to be worried. In fact, it was quite fun trying to move your body with the movement of the boat, a bit like riding a horse, Anna thought. Once or twice, when the boat went into a wave, water came over the side, and again people seemed to think it was all part of the fun. They passed the island and moved on towards the rocks. From Pole Reef, you couldn't really see very much beyond the island, so Anna was surprised at the size of some of the rocks, almost like mini islands. Tristan took the boat close in and slowed the engine. "There are very often seals around here. In fact, we might see some young ones. The first ones are usually born around this time," he said quietly. "Look," said a man at the back of the boat. "There are two in the water over there." Everybody focused their binoculars where he was pointing. The heads of two adult seals appeared, and then disappeared behind a wave. Someone tried to take a picture. Tristan took the boat in and out of the rocks. They managed to see some seals out of the water, lying on rocks, almost sunbathing, but no young ones. They were about to turn for home when Gary saw something white on the rocks just above the water. It was a very young seal. "Don't make too much noise," said Tristan. "We don't want to frighten it, or worry its mum wherever she is. This is the first one I've seen this year. I guess it's only a few days old." Not many people on the boat had ever seen a young seal before, so they were really pleased. Anna thought how helpless it looked, all by itself on the rock. And as if he knew what she was thinking, Tristan said, "The first few days are dangerous ones for the young. Some of the bigger seabirds attack them. They go for their eyes." The boat was moving up and down quite a lot, and it was difficult to stand. Suddenly, the boat was caught by a bigger wave, and an elderly woman fell sideways. In trying to save herself, she hit her arm on the side. Immediately, people crowded round her and started talking. "Are you all right? Here, let's get you up onto a seat. Just sit quietly for a minute. Oh, what a nasty shock." Tristan moved the boat out into deeper water, away from the rocks. He looked at Anna, and his eyes seemed to be asking her, "Could you?" She went over to the woman. "Would you like me to look?" she said. "I'm a nurse." "I'm all right," she said. "Oh, I think I just hurt my arm, that's all." Anna moved the woman and her husband up to the front of the boat. She looked at the arm, which was quite red and already beginning to get bigger. Very gently she pressed, and the woman made a small sound. "Well, Mrs. Anna began. Sheila, the woman said. "Sheila, I don't think you've broken it, but it'd be a good idea to have it x-rayed when we get back, just to make sure." Anna looked up. "Tristan, where's the nearest place for that?" "The cottage hospital in Kingham. It's not far. I'll take you in the car, Mrs. Taylor." Anna found a bandage in the first aid box and tied Mrs. Taylor's arm up. The poor old woman had gone a bit white now and was shaking. Someone passed her a cup of tea. I was right, thought Anna. They came prepared for anything. By the time they reached Polreath, Mrs. Taylor looked better, but her arm was clearly giving her a lot of pain. Fortunately, Tristan's car was near the harbour, and Mr. and Mrs. Taylor got in the back. "Would you like me to come too?" asked Anna. "Please," said Tristan. He looked more worried than anybody. I wonder if he's insured for accidents, she thought. I suppose something like this is not good for his business. The X-ray showed bruising, but the arm wasn't broken. "I'm really sorry, Mrs. Taylor," said Tristan. "It's not your fault," she replied. "You're not responsible for the sea. I shouldn't have been standing up." "Well, let's go back home. I'll buy everyone a drink when we get back. I think we all need one," Tristan said. The Taylors didn't want a drink, so Tristan and Anna left them at their hotel. "Your arm will hurt a lot tonight," said Anna, "so take some aspirins before you go to bed. They'll help with the pain." "Thank you for your help," said Mr. Taylor. "We'll probably see you around somewhere in the next day or two." "Poor old thing," said Anna, drinking her beer in the fisherman's arms. "She was lucky today, but I don't think she'll be doing much for the next couple of days. That arm will hurt for a bit." "I was lucky," replied Tristan with a shake of the head. "It's fortunate she was so nice about it. Someone different might have complained and spread the word about. People would soon begin to think I was a bit careless with my passengers, and there are 1 or 2 people in this village who would be quite happy to see me lose business." "Really? Why?" asked Anna. "Oh, jealousy, I suppose," Tristan replied. "It's a small place, Polreath. Feelings get a bit strong sometimes." "Have they got reason to be jealous?" Anna asked, remembering the conversation that she and Stephen had heard in the bar the other day. "Well," he laughed, "I'm not sure I'm the best person to answer that. You should ask them. People might think I've got a good life, what with a boat and 2 cottages." "And maybe a 3rd cottage to come?" Anna added. "Why do you say that?" Tristan asked sharply. "Oh, sorry, I shouldn't have. I was just repeating something we heard about you in here the other day," Anna said, wishing she hadn't asked. "A guy called Jack was saying that you were interested in another cottage in the village." "Ah, Jack. There you are, you see. The stories that spread in a small village." Tristan looked a bit angry. "Well, look, I'm sorry," Anna said quickly. "It's none of my business. Shall we change the subject? I meant to say earlier how much I enjoyed the trip, except for the accident, of course. You made it interesting for everyone. Thanks." There was a bit of an uncomfortable silence. Tristan stared into his beer and then said, "I don't want another cottage. I was interested in the price because it's more or less the same size as Dolphin Cottage, and I wanted to know how much I might be able to sell that for." "You want to sell Dolphin Cottage?" said Anna in complete surprise. "Oh, don't! It's too lovely to lose." "I don't really know whether I want to or not. I might need to get some money. It's got some rather mixed memories for me. Jill, you know. And as you now understand, owning 2 places can cause bad feeling. Anyway, I've got to go. Believe it or not, I've got another trip to do. A quick 1 hour up the coast." He waited a second or 2 before continuing. But I was wondering, if you're not doing anything tonight, can I buy you dinner? To thank you for dinner last night, and for Mrs. Taylor." He looked at her carefully to see what she would say. Would she think he was just being friendly, or more than that? He meant it to be friendly, but he had an awful feeling he wanted more. "Thank you. I'd like that," she said, returning his look. "I thought we could drive to a place in the next village. It'd be a change. Meet in the car park at 8? "Fine. Have a safe trip this afternoon." She ordered a coffee and sat there, wondering what she was doing, and feeling guilty because she hadn't really thought about Stephen all day. The next day, Anna woke up not long after dawn. She could hear seagulls crying. She thought about an early morning walk. Maybe tomorrow, she decided, and turned over for a bit more sleep. She didn't notice that Stephen wasn't lying beside her. Stephen had woken up even earlier and had heard the sounds of the birds. He lay there for a time, listening, but slowly his mind started to fill up with memories of his last conversation with his boss. "Oh, no," he thought. "I don't want to start thinking about that now. I'm on holiday. I need a break." But the problems of the last few weeks at work wouldn't go away. He could feel his stomach begin to get tight, a sure sign that he was getting worried. It's no good," he thought. "I'll have to get up and do something." Quietly he got dressed and left the cottage. The sun had just risen, and the air already felt warm. He started jogging up the hill out of the village, hoping that some physical activity would help. By the time he reached the top, he was a bit out of breath. He looked into the car park to make sure the car was still there, then carried on walking. There was a signpost saying footpath, so he went along it. It led to the edge of the cliff. At this point, he was standing about 100 meters above the sea, looking back down onto Polreath Harbour. It was a wonderful view, one he felt he'd always remember. There were 1 or 2 people on their boats in the harbour, including a blonde-haired man. "I wonder if that's Tristan," thought Stephen. He watched the activity in the harbour, and slowly the tightness in his stomach started to go away. He felt calmer. He realized that the problems at work were not going to disappear. He was going to have to think about his job clearly and carefully and decide what he really wanted to do, and try and talk to Anna about it. Once or twice recently, he had seen her looking at him almost angrily. Poor Anna, he thought. She must get fed up with me sometimes. He had started to walk back along the path when he heard voices from the harbour below. He turned and saw a dark-haired man standing at the front of a fishing boat, shouting at the blonde man. They seemed to be having some sort of argument. The dark-haired man kept pointing at the blonde man's boat. Stephen enjoyed the fact that other people seemed to have problems at work too, not just him. And he watched as the 2 small boats left the harbour.